Okay, now I've got a picture of this girl. I must admit she looks a bit fuzzy. Sorry about that. But she's blowing a raspberry. She's blowing a raspberry because she doesn't like levels of measurement, because not many people do, apart from maybe me and a few others. I find it really interesting, this concept of levels of measurement. And some of you find it really difficult to get your head around. The only thing I can say about this is listen to what I've got to say, watch the video, and just keep looking at it. Just keep looking at it, and the penny will drop. The penny will drop. Sometimes you'll still not be sure, and I will have arguments with other psychology teachers whether something is ratio data or ordinal data. But that's okay. Let's get the main points. So let's have a go at our data here. Okay, levels of measurements. All right. So this is the whole idea, is that when researchers collect in numbers, when they're collecting their data, numbers of whatever it will be, the number of words recalled, the time it takes for you to complete a task, your rating of how attractive Boris Johnson is, whatever it is, there's a number comes in. And we assume that those numbers are all the same, but they're not. They're different kinds of numbers. So can you think of any kind of different types? Well, what have we talked about? We've talked about rating scales. We've talked about precise measurements like time. We talked about whether someone can do something or not. They're different types of data: tallies, rating scales, time, number of words recalled, all different kinds of stuff. Well, there we go. I'll put that on there. So, but some of those are more precise than others. And let's make sure we use the word precise. If something is precise, that means it gets to the clearest point of the detail. Yeah. And that actually precision makes it very detailed and completely accurate. Accurate, maybe not a word, but yeah, but that idea of precision. Okay. So for instance, if we were to talk about how warm it is today, right now it's Saturday afternoon, it's getting dark for me, it's not so warm out there. Yeah. So if someone said on a scale of 1 to 10, how warm is it outside? I would say it's about a 4. If 1's really cold and 10's really warm, it's about a 4. That's how cold it is. Yeah. So that's a scale. But if I went outside with a thermometer and I measured it and I'm like, oh, look at this, it's 3.4 degrees centigrade, which one is more precise? The rating scale or the thermometer? Well, the thermometer is more precise, isn't it? That's going to be more clear. There's much more detail on that answer. Okay, so data comes in different levels of precision. Different levels of precision. And it could be, say, is it hot or cold? I say it's cold. Hot, cold. That's like that. That's worse than my rating scale. That just says one thing or another, but not how much. Okay, so different levels of precision for your data. All right. Okay. Now it's important to know what level of data your information is. And why is it important? Because you use that information to identify statistics. You need stronger statistical tests to work on non-precise data and less stronger tests for more precise data. But that's for another day. Right, so what are the types of data? Yeah, bit of a French class, a bit of French, there we are, it is noir. Yeah, what does that mean? Okay, all right, maybe for you it's like it's a real black subject, for me because it's not in there. But what are we talking about? N, nominal data. O, ordinal data. I, interval data. R, ratio data. You just got to link types of data or levels of measurement. It will use the two different terms. Okay, you've just got to somehow connect that with noir. All right, noir. So let's talk about these. This is in your booklet. Okay, I love this thing, apart from you can't read it. I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, I can't read this. Okay, but it's this whole idea that nominal, nom is French for name. Okay, it's just a category. Ordinal, yeah, ord for order. It means the data can be put in order. Interval means that it's just coming up as I got this from YouTube. Interval is this idea that there are set intervals, and ratio that there are set intervals, but there's something about the ratio of it, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's go through these. In fact, this is now, let me just get on. There we go. We might just be looking at a YouTube clip, which I don't want. So let me just stop that. And let me go back to PowerPoint. No. What I will do is I will put that video on the classroom for you. Right, nominal data. It is the basic level of measurement, meaning it gives you no precision really at all, really, apart from if it is or isn't something. And that means it's a category. Okay, so it's how often something falls into that category. How often something falls into that category. All right, okay, so it doesn't give you any information about how much it falls into the category, just how. So we've looked at, for instance, how many males and females are in your psychology class. Yeah, it doesn't categorize how male you are or how female you are. It just says male, female. Okay, so categories could be stuff like whether you passed a test or not. It's not saying how much you passed it by, it's whether you passed your driving test or not. Categories of data could be whether you achieved an A grade or not. Okay, so they tend to be, you can have categories whether you are like pizza, pasta, or chips. You know, by the way, some of my students were talking about eating pasta, gravy, and cheese in my lesson. It was disgusting. I'm like, ugh. But anyway, so whether you like pizza, pasta, or chips is interesting, you know, in the sense that, but it doesn't tell you how much you like them or whatever. It's just one of the categories that's there. And you tally up how many times they're in that category, how many times people make that choice. That's nominal data. Now, ordinal data, if you're ever stuck, just write, if you're not sure about a piece of data in a research, just write at least ordinal. And this kind of gets you there. Because ordinal data means that the information you're collecting can be put in an order. So one thing is more than another. Okay, so it's not just that you're choosing one thing or another, that if you choose one thing that has a higher value than another. Okay, but the rank or the intervals between are unknown. I'll explain in a minute. Okay, so like a rating scale. Okay, now if I was to ask you to rate Boris Johnson on how attractive he is, how attractive do you find Boris Johnson? And if you're to say to me, oh, I think Boris Johnson's a 2, and I would like to say, well, actually, I think he's a 4 out of 5. Yeah, I don't actually at all. I'm just making this up as I'm going along, but yeah, he's probably a 2. Really, I'm with you on that one. But anyway, so, okay. So it's a scale of 1 to 5. You say 2, I say 4. Does that mean then, because I'm saying 2, that I'm twice as attracted to him? Well, the answer is no, it's not. It just means I'm 2 places up. But what happens if I go and ask my neighbour Elsie next door, and she says, well, I think he's a 3. Does that mean Elsie is exactly in the middle of attractiveness between you, who says 2, and me that says 4, because she said 3? Well, the answer is no, it's not. It just means that she's more attracted to him than you and less attracted to him than me, the 3. It's just an order. So rating scales are put in order, and that's ordinal data. Okay, first, second, third, or fourth, that works as well. You just, because this one comes first, it's how much first they came from second. You don't know the distance between first and second, you just know first, second, or third, or fourth. Yeah. Okay. Score on a questionnaire or memory test. This is an interesting one. If something is not standardized, like a memory test, it is ordinal data. So for instance, if I was to ask you to remember a list of words, and the words are tummy, chocolate, fantastic, and pineapple. Okay. And I remembered tummy and fantastic, and you remembered chocolate and pineapple. We both got 2. Does that mean our memories are exactly the same? Well, we don't know, because they were 2 different words. Okay, let's say there are 10 words and you got 2 and I got 4. Does that mean that your memory is twice as good as mine? Well, no, it just means you got 2 more words than me. So the number of words that you've got, because they're not standardized words, tummy and pineapple are very different words, they're kind of irregular, it's an irregular scale. So that means that it's ordinal. The reason I'm saying this is if the words had been standardized, so all of the words, let's say there were 5-letter words that were very common in the English language, suddenly that becomes a standard. Each of the words has the same value or similar value. That actually then becomes ratio data. Okay. Now, if you're struggling with that, when it says a memory, this memory of words, just say it's ordinal, unless you can see that it's standardized. Okay. All right. Are we okay with that? So let's go back on ordinal data. Just means the data, each person's score is put in order in comparison to the others on the scale or whatever it is. But there's no standardized measures. Now, standardized measures or equal measurement comes with interval and ratio data. We'll cluster them to the same at the moment. We'll kind of shimmy them around a bit in a minute. Okay, so each measurement, each unit, each point has the same value, but it's just the amount of values that kind of make their score. Okay, so there's an equal gap between each measurements. It is the most precise measure of level of measurement. So an example are, they talk about public scales. So public scales are things that everyone agrees on, and we use those scales, like minutes. My minutes are the same as your minutes, is the same as Elsie who lives next door's minutes, is the same as Boris Johnson's minutes. Well, maybe not, but so what does that mean? It means that when you measure the time it takes for someone to do a puzzle, if somebody does that puzzle in 2 minutes and someone does it in 4 minutes precisely, you could say, well, they did it in twice the time. Why? Because each unit is exactly the same. Each minute is exactly the same as the other minute. Remember on our scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those aren't kind of like minutes, because the difference between 1 and 2 might be completely different to the difference between 3 and 4. So, okay, so each minute is the same. And this goes the same for distance, meters, centimeters, millimeters. Each meter is exactly the same. Each temperature, each thermometer, each centigrade is the same. Okay, so what I would say, a rule of thumb, if you're wondering if it's interval or ratio data or it's ordinal, if it's measured by some kind of device or machine, i.e. a clock, a thermometer, a tape measure, then it's interval or ratio data. Okay? Right. So the score on a test, if it's a standardized test, i.e. each question gets you the same marks, okay? Or if it's a memory test, each word has been standardized as the same length, then that becomes ratio data, okay? Now, something that is standardized is IQ, an IQ test. Each IQ score point, is measurement, is 1 unit. And it is actually a standardized unit. Okay. Right, I hope you're okay with that. Now, of course, you'll be saying, well, what's the difference then between ratio and interval data? Quite simply, interval data, 0 is part of the measurement. Ratio data, 0 means nothing. So if the data you're looking at, if the first measurement of that data is 1, then it's ratio data. If the first measurement is minus something, then it's interval data. Okay, but don't forget that the 0 has to be in the scale, has to be part of the measurement. So really, apart from my bank account, the only interval data you will come across is temperature. Temperature is very rarely used in psychology. It's used sometimes in things like stress, where they measure skin temperature, which gives you a measurement of stress response. Okay, but it's very rarely used. So my advice to you, unless it says temperature, do not write interval for anything. Just don't write it. If your teacher asks, is this interval, ratio, or whatever, unless it's temperature, don't say it. Students love to say it, interval, but don't. It's only one thing, temperature, or my bank account. That goes into 0 as part of the scale. All right, okay. So you're less likely to come across interval. So just don't worry about that. So let's just go through this again. Let's go through recap. That actually there's precision differences in data. Okay, ratio data is the most precise data, because on ratio data, each unit of measurement is equal or exactly the same. Interval is less so, because 0 kind of muddies that up, but interval's not going to come up that often. Ordinal data, okay, is the confusing one. Ordinal data means that your units of measurement are not in an equal scale. There's not an equal value between each one, but one value is higher than the other. So usually that's things like rating scales, but it can be non-standardized memory tests, lists of words, things like that. Nominal data, there are no units of measurement. It's literally, are you or aren't you, or which one of those categories are you? Yeah, very, very simple. Okay, right. If you want to, press pause now, if you're managing to survive with this, because we've been going for half an hour. If you want to, press pause and just have a look at these and see which ones you can work out. All right. Okay. Right. Time taken to run 100 meter is ratio data. The observations are how many cars stopped at a red light, because either stopped or not, nominal data. The examination score is ordinal data, unless it's a standardized score. How many in the class were awarded an A grade is nominal, because you either awarded it or not. Let me just put this on here. Body temperature of athletes, well, of course, is interval. Remember what we said. How many words beginning with S you can say in 30 seconds is ordinal, because each word is going to be different. So you could say 6, and you could say Satsuma, you know, and they're very different in length. So it's not standardized. So not in equal measurement. The height of 20 students ratio, because you're measuring it. Okay, let's have a look at this in some exam questions. A psychologist wants to investigate, you should be familiar, this reading confidence in a primary school. What I'm interested in, I know you can see my head in the corner, I apologize for that. There, it's going to happen again and again. Maybe if I pop me down here for a minute. Okay, so what is going on? All you have to do is look at what they are measuring. What are they measuring? Well, they are measuring, remember this here, so there's students who have children like rated, I'm just reading it now quick, and they had the therapy dog, they didn't have the therapy dog, they had the therapy dog. But that's the conditions. So we don't need to say, oh, it's nominal, because look, they had the dog and they didn't have no, that's the conditions. That's the experimental and control condition. So what we're looking at is what they actually measured. Well, they measured the teachers rated the reading confidence of the children, okay? And that's what they did. And so they rated them low, medium, or high. Okay, so if they did that, that is ordinal data. It's a rating scale. Right, let me just move me back up here. Okay, librarians concerned about low numbers of college students borrowing books from the college library. To investigate his concerns, he wanted to plot a number of occasions where a book had been borrowed from the college library in the last 5 years on a graph. Okay, so it's the number of times a book had been borrowed. It's not saying how much, how long it took for them to borrow it. It doesn't give you anything. It's just whether they borrowed the book or not. The level of data is nominal. Okay. Right, pop me down here and let's have a look at this one. The psychologist is concerned about the impact that playing violent computer games is having on development of school children, specifically the concern that school children are becoming too aggressive. He decided to investigate the issue using a quasi-experiment of match pairs design. The IV was whether the participant regularly plays on video computer games or not. So there you go. That's the two conditions. Lots of students will look at that. Oh, but they played a computer game. It's nominal. No, it's not nominal on that sense. That's the two conditions. The psychology then assessed the aggression. So this is what they're measuring by identifying the number of incidents recorded by the children's school which indicated aggression. So how many times they were aggressive. It doesn't tell you what the levels of aggression are at all. It's whether they're aggressive or not. Okay, and so the level of data there is nominal. They didn't rate them on their aggressiveness. They didn't record, okay, a score of aggression. It was just whether they were aggressive or not. Okay, so it is nominal data. Right, let's have a look at this one down below here. A researcher wanted to investigate if police officers are better at identifying the general public. We've looked at this in our classes, haven't we? After seeking permission from a chief constable, the researcher randomly selected 10 police officers from the local police force and 10 students studying at local university. That's your two groups. If there's two groups, that's your condition. Whether they're a police officer or a student is not what they're measuring. That's the two conditions. Sorry, it's just every time people kind of get that one mixed up. So, right. They were asked to come to psychology laboratory to complete the research. All the participants were assessed individually. They were presented with a film of an actor making 10 statements. So now it's not whether they're one statement or not. They were given 10 statements. 5 were true, 5 were false. The participant had to report whether they thought each of the actor's statements was true or false. Okay, now these are real exam questions. If it's true or false, what level of data is that? It is nominal data. That is nominal data, true or false. However, when you put them all together, the number of times they got the true or falses of one participant, and then you compare that the score to another participant, okay, suddenly we have 10, a score out of 10, something out of 10, compared to another score of something out of 10. Yeah, so the police officer gets 8 out of 10 right, and the student gets 6 out of 10 right. Okay, suddenly when it becomes 6 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, suddenly it's not whether they were right or wrong, it's how much they were right, how much they were wrong. So that data actually is ordinal data. You see how I got that? Ordinal data. Now this is where some of you might be like, whoa, this is confusing. These are exam questions. Usually they give you a clue by saying Man Whitney was used or something like that, and you can look at that later. Okay, so what I've been hoping to do on this is, yes, we go through quantity and qualitative data, but we've looked at levels of data, okay, and how levels of data are different in their precision. And the thing you've got to work out is, are they looking at a category? Is there a fixed measurement, something that a machine would measure or a tool would measure? Then if it's a category, it's nominal. It's a tool, it's interval ratio. By the way, it's never interval unless it's temperature. Okay. And then if it's anything else, just call it ordinal, or at least ordinal, and you will be okay. Right, I hope that's been helpful. It's been a long video. I'm going to cut it up to make it easy for you guys. All right, take care.